Hi there. It's time for our Friday night Spiritual Insights with Michael Mirdad program. So thank you for joining us. A lot of folks are asking, and these days in talks and coming up with feedback when I mention such things related to our transformation that we're in. So the earth is actually in a major transformation. And I know that most of you know that. If you're watching a program like this, that should be no new news. But we're in a major transition. But we are living in a symbiotic relationship with the planet. So when you talk about the planet going through changes, whether you say, wow, the poor planet is going through economic issues, or it's going through ecological issues, or whatever you name it to be, you can't have it going through changes without us going through those same changes. When the earth is going through a global warming, something's happening in us. When the earth is going through war and conflict, depression, the Great Depression, it's happening within people. In fact, it happens in people before it actually is reflected outside. In a sense, they're happening simultaneously, but it happens, all things happen in our consciousness before they manifest. So what I'm saying there is that it's important for us to look at ourselves and say, wow, there's so much duality and conflict in politics or in the world or in genders. It's time to stop and say, wait, okay, what is that signifying in myself? Because if you don't get the message, if you don't let it take you on a journey within yourself, then when it's over, when it's blown over eventually, because things happen in cycles on this earth and they cycle around and around. So if we don't get it while it's raw, while it's up, then what's going to happen is it'll blow over, and then some of us are going to say, I think we might have learned something better from that. Whether it's world wars and then they're ending and people are celebrating, they're celebrating, but they're distracted because they're distracted by winning or losing a war. They're really not interested in looking at any of the deeper issues because in a sense they're relieved just to be done whether they win or lose. And then the same goes for any other topic. And, right now people talk about duality and they talk about even violence. A lot of things in the news about this and that. I mean, I don't even recommend people watch these kinds of things on the news because you're being, fed what they want you to hear. But, watch it if you want. All I'm saying, though, is that when we're going through these changes, it's time for us to look within and see what's really happening within ourselves. Because again, when it blows over, we're sort of not in the mood to learn anymore. A lot of people, just the most common prayer in all the world and throughout history has been, in more or less these words, "Dear God, get me out of this mess." It's like, "Dear God, bring them back to me. Dear God, make this pain go away. Dear God, heal me from such and such." They all mean the same thing. Get me out of the situation I'm in. Fix it. Humans do not know how to pray. All they're doing is throwing tantrums. I know there's tears on the face. I know sometimes there's desperation and there's anxiety and it all looks very real and very heartfelt. But most of the time, it's just a tantrum because you also get tears and frustrations and anxieties when you're throwing tantrums. It looks very passionate and very heartfelt. But real prayer is to say, not get me out of this mess, but help me while I'm in it. Be with me while I'm in it. Walk with me. Walk with me. Now I'm in the darkest places. Be a light like a torch for me and walk with me. Show me what to do in the dark moments. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. That's the Beatles, obviously, but Paul McCartney going through a personal dark night of the soul. His band was splitting up. He was heartbroken. They wouldn't communicate with each other. And when they were, it was accusatory and attacking, defending. So he didn't know what was happening, but he loved that band. He loved the band more than any of the other Beatles, in fact, for various reasons, but he did. He really, really loved them. That's why he kept them going. He kept trying to move them into new directions and move them into let's do more, let's do more, let's do better. He was the one, and that only ticked off another one or two of the guys in the band, but he loved it. So when he was losing that, he lost what was for you losing a loved one. It was like for you losing a job. It was losing something that was very dear to him. And it's all levels. You're losing things financially, emotionally, you're losing friendships, you're losing reputation. Everything is crashing. And so he was going through a dark night of the soul, but he didn't sing, whisper words of wisdom, take this away from me. He was talking about be with me. And he's talking sort of a double meaning, Mother Mary being with me. In one respect, spiritually, whether he knew it consciously or not, he was calling out to God, Mother Mary, the Divine Mother, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, or whatever, saying, help me, be with me, but help me. And it's okay to reach out, to call out and say, help me, but have the courage to say, help me by being with me, rather than help me by doing what I want. I'm going to tell you, God, what I want. Fix such and such for me. So McCartney was saying Mother Mary, but he was also with a double meaning. He was also mourning in that moment, because when you go through darkness, you're going through all darkness. So he was remembering the loss of his own mother that he loved very much. So her name was Mary. So it's Mother Mary with a double meaning. And this isn't just Beatle trivia. This is to say, when you and I go through things, please remember, you're never going through one thing, guys. You're never going through just one loss, one ending of a relationship. If today I lost a relationship, it's every relationship I've ever lost. It's people that have died, friends that have walked away, friends that moved away, ending of schoolmates or whatever it was to you, to me. It's all of them at the same time. Even the loss of an animal comes up when we're dealing with things. Humans like to think so linearly. They like to think such and such happened today. It's never, nothing I see is exactly what I think it is. There's so much more than meets the eye. It's just cycles within cycles within cycles. And so even when you're struggling with betrayal, it's past life betrayal, it's childhood betrayal, young adulthood betrayal, adulthood betrayal, today, yesterday, it's jobs betrayal, friendship betrayals, and so on. So the more we grow spiritually, the more we move into multiples. When people say, well, what's it like to go from the third dimension to the fifth dimension? It's just everything is exponential. In one respect, things are simpler because they're more like oneness. And there's clearly a higher love frequency, more of a love frequency in the fifth dimension than the third. You don't go to the fifth dimension and just say everything is multiplied badly, It's really a higher frequency of love. The third and fourth dimension is really nearly as tough as it gets on any evolutionary level. It really is. So we are, for all intents and purposes, we are living in hell. The only thing that can get worse than a living hell is a pseudo-living hell, meaning a dead hell, meaning what we call hell on the other side. And what I mean by that is that what's worse than a living hell, where you're living and breathing and walking around and dealing with karma, because that's what hell is payment of your sins. That's what the tradition, religion say it is. Well, what do you think karma is? Payment of sins. It's payment of mistakes, rehashing things to clear them. It's nicer wording, but it's all the same. It's stuff that didn't go well is being cleared, whether it's being paid for in hell or in purgatory or on, some small town on earth or big city on earth, wherever, it's still the same. Payment time. So, we look at this and say, well, could it get worse? Well, only in the sense that on earth, you're mostly dealing with things you can sense with your senses. You can see the person that's struggling with you or you with them. You can feel it, with your hands. You can touch things, and people that pass away. You can hear the moans of hurtful, things, the sadness and crying and the pains of this world. So there's all these senses. You can use your senses and experience hell with 5 senses. What is on the other side is hell that you can't experience with your physical senses. It's more of an emotional hell. So in other words, there is a hell on the other side, but it's only a figurative sense, a hell. It's still a place of clearing stuff, but it's clearing things that are less tangible. So there is still some clearing place. And what I'm leading to is that the more we grow, things intensify in one sense, and that is they multiply. On your way to the fifth dimensional consciousness, and there's videos, I'm sure, all over line, and and books and lectures going on that basically just try to placate the ego. Just people doing videos or books like, what it's like to live in the fifth dimension, or hey everybody, we're on our way to the fifth dimension, woohoo! And it sounds all grand and sweet. You do not go to the fifth dimension without dealing with the third and fourth. I mean, you can't. It doesn't exist. It doesn't work that way. You don't just go, oh, well, now that I heard about the fifth dimension, I guess I'll go right now. That's like saying, oh, I heard there's a lottery. I guess it's mine. It isn't. It isn't. Go through the process. Buy some tickets. Use your hard-earned money to buy tickets and so on and so on. There's a process. And, with fifth dimensional attainment, it doesn't happen because you snapped your fingers. It doesn't happen because you decided to make it happen. It doesn't even happen because you use words like prayers or even affirmations. I am now living in the fifth dimension. If you're a jerk, you're not. You can say, I'm a jerk, but I'm living in the fifth dimension. There's no jerks allowed. So you're not living in the fifth dimension. You're still here. And if you continue to be a jerk, you'll pay for being a jerk here in the third and the fourth dimension, which is the one you go to when you pass away. That's what I meant by the astral plane. That's what I meant by dealing with, emotional versions of hell. And I'm not trying to give you a bleak outlook. I'm just saying that this is the realities. These are the realities that we work with dimensionally. If you want to become fifth dimensional, you have to become fifth dimensional. Become this. Be this. You have to be that consciousness. You can't fake it. You have to become that consciousness. So, what does that involve? Everything, like I said, is first multiples, meaning I'm ready. I'm ready to start awakening to the fifth dimensional consciousness. Well, first of all, I wouldn't recommend that. I would say I'm ready to remember that I am one with God, beyond dimensionality. You go ahead and affirm fifth dimension, and I'll just go to heaven. I'll just go to God, because it's not fifth dimension God. It isn't. It isn't fifth. It isn't sixth. It isn't 60th. There is no dimension. It's beyond dimensionality. This consciousness we call God. So just set your course to God, man. God first. Set your course to God. Let's go. Let's go there, and then everything that's in your way, lessons, achievements, whatever it happens to be, will come to you at its given right time, perfect time. Trust in the Divine Mother, and she'll bring all the right things at the right time. But going from the third to fifth dimension, set your course on God. But if you are wanting to think about fifth dimension, because that is a next step for us all, we are in the process, all of us, moving from third/fourth dimension to fifth. But it doesn't just happen. It's not because of the year. It's not because of 2012, the year. It's not because of the year 2000, the year. It isn't any particular magic of that nature. It's a consciousness readiness. We have to be ready. We've heard this said many times. Jesus, when will you return? Or people channeling, when will Jesus return? Or Edgar Casey's readings. The most common answer is when the way is made ready. What do you think that means? It's when enough of us choose a consciousness of love, then we make these quantum leaps into consciousness, higher and higher consciousness. However, there'll be a critical mass point. You can't say exactly what that point is. Nobody can. But there's a critical mass point where all the people on earth will shift. Now, when that time comes, let's just pretend you could call the day. Let's pretend we've passed it, and now we look back historically in the records to see, what did it look like when it happened? Well, first of all, it didn't happen in one moment. It was built upon day after day after day for years. So this has been building since around 1960. Now, it's going to take, many, tens of years for that fluid kind of process so that there's a readiness. It can't be too shocking, too sudden. However, when the time comes, which will be in our generation or the next, within 1 or 2 generations, this is going to happen. Now, when this happens, and this is agreed upon by many, so I don't want to start throwing out, sources and whatever. This is what I know to be true. You might or might not agree. But in this time, when it's happening, if we were looking back at the records, we would first see that it took time to build over time. It took time to progress into that readiness. Then we would say, then there was a time, more seemingly sudden, when things seemed to reach a critical mass. And when it reached a critical mass, something fantastic happened. And what it is that the birth, it's like birth pains for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, and so on. Birth pains. But at some point, the head crowns when the baby starts showing. And I know some of you would have known that and some not, so that's why I explained. So it's the birthing now starts to happen, which can be more intense in some regards, physically, more intense. But eventually, once the baby's born, there's a lot of tears of joy. Like the whole room, birth room, wherever it happens to be, has shifted. Like, oh my God, there's a baby. The baby in this story is known as the Christ. So we're all going to be birthing the Christ. The Divine Mother is going to help us birth the Christ. The question is going to be, there's an order out all around the world asking for midwives, and not literally, but midwives, to help birth the Christ. If you're doing work like this, if you're watching programs like this, if you're teaching in programs like this, I don't care what you call it. You might have some fancy name for what you're doing, but really, we're all just going to be here helping to birth each other forward. It doesn't matter what gender or what race or whatever else we happen to be or call ourselves. It's the bottom line is we're looking for midwives. And when the call goes out, they didn't say we're looking for midwives of a certain color or a gender. They're not even saying we're looking for midwives with a certain, educational background. It's right now, a baby's coming. Can somebody help step in? Some of us will have more expertise to know what to do when the baby's not yet come, but it's on its way, while it's coming and after it's arrived. So our different life experiences are actually helping to prepare us for our role in the birthing. And the birthing is for ourselves and for others. In a sense, we're hoping that there are people helping us in our birthing ourselves so that we can be birthed midwives. Now we're now grown into being ready and act as midwives. But some of us don't need training. Some of us will have 1 minute's notice going from the old style of life that you had to new. It doesn't mean that you had to have a whole lifetime of spirituality. It could just be brand new. You might just wake up yesterday, wake up 2 seconds ago and go, okay, wait, what just happened? Oh, something's happening. Oh, birthing. Can I help? And it'll be good enough. The Divine Mother knows how to assign all the roles, all right? So you and I, we're being asked to step up. Now, I'm in a position, and some of us are in positions, to birth the midwives. True, some of us are in more of that position. But then there's the midwives that are birthing the children. And when we birth midwives, we're really birthing the Christ in the midwives and the midwives themselves, the teachers of today. But there's also truth to the fact that those midwives are going to be birthing the Christ in many, many other people. So that's, in a sense, that's really, it's an accurate portrayal or metaphor for what's happening in the world, around the world, through the world. So something beautiful is happening. It is not just humanity achieving fifth dimensional consciousness. We just happen to be achieving fifth dimensional consciousness. It's a stepping stone, but it's not our goal. It is not. A Course in Miracles tells you, you do these workbook lessons and you're going to start noticing your vision changes. You might start to notice lights around people's bodies. He was clearly talking about auras. So you're going to start seeing etheric kinds of things. He said, don't pay attention to it. Just keep moving on. He tells you, don't put a lot of emphasis on it. Doesn't mean don't see the lights. What I'm saying is that he's saying that's not your goal. Your psychic development, intuitive development, fifth dimensional consciousness, and so forth. They're only symptoms of your movement through yet another level of consciousness. Don't stay there. Don't stick there. Don't obsess there. Don't focus there. Just notice it and go, wow, isn't this fun? Isn't this cool? See colors. I'm noticing chakras now, or auras, and wow, I can see past lives in people. My intuition's really refining. My creativity's starting to flow more. I'm becoming more prosperous. Great. It's all great. Keep going. Don't stop and go, I've landed. You have not arrived. Go. Keep moving and enjoy. It's all just part of the process, and keep going. Hope that made sense. Now, the fifth dimension and any other higher dimension that we shift to is going to be including some drama, just like birthing. So in one respect, it's a beautiful concept. Our senses heighten, creativity heightens, consciousness expands, our sense of oneness, our good wishing for, humanity instead of competing and survival of the fittest. So that's beautiful in itself, obviously. However, you can achieve the higher without processing, releasing the lower. That's simple as that. Now, what I meant earlier by it starts to multiply is you're going into multiple dimensions because you're third and fourth, and then simultaneously experiencing, manifesting fifth, and sometimes even other levels of consciousness besides that. So as we move as an individual and as a race, as the race does it, I'm doing it. As I do it, the race is doing it. Any one of us. So it's a we and an I at the same time. So as we move through that, we're going to notice the body changes because the earth is changing, therefore my body is changing. People are manifesting symptoms and illnesses and new labels for illnesses that didn't exist short times ago for various reasons. But one of them is because our body/consciousness is changing. And so we're manifesting new things. The symptoms of aches and pains and disorders are really never meant to be, but they're symptomatic of going to a higher level of consciousness. But the symptoms, the pain was never meant to be part of the process of our awakening. It's really reflecting more of, first, our resistance to the higher dimensionality. It's kind of like we're fighting to keep the body, like a person who's passing away, going into the next dimension as they pass, along with them simultaneously experiencing pain and moaning as they're passing away. A lot of times that pain is coming from their fear to move to the next dimension. So that's partly what I mean by that. But the pain is also sometimes being experienced because you're moving into, your body is shifting, a different genetics, a different vibration, a different frequency. And it can actually be a little strange. You're moving, it seems like it would be effortless because you're moving to dimensions, vibrations, but there shouldn't be an ache. Well, there is, because if you have a stuck place in your body, and then a frequency starts to heighten, it's basically going to need to sort of dissolve that stuck area. When it dissolves it, you might be feeling it getting dissolved. You might be feeling the gland that isn't functioning properly. Let's say it has, well, just like when you have faith healers, a lot of times you're feeling the ache of them doing work on you, because they're removing something. Well, it shouldn't hurt if it's removed. No, the pain isn't that it's removed. The pain is that it's being removed. It's the process of something extracted that it can, have that effect. Our resistance and fears of the new are going to just multiply that ache, that pain, or whatever it is. But this is what's going on in the bodies. So there's a frequency shifting and something's being extracted, lifted out. Why? Because your body needs to change vibration and it's going to shift to a higher frequency. So therefore anything that isn't that higher frequency has to be basically dissolved. It's almost like an ultrasound process. The ultrasound sometimes is used to break up stagnant pieces. It could be calcium deposits or whatever it happens to be. But they can use like a sonar. They can use these different kinds of frequencies they think of it as, some people describe it as sound frequencies to create sound to break up glass, sound to break rock, using high frequency sound. Well, what is higher dimensionality if it isn't higher frequency? So sometimes it's the sound of that other that's having that effect. I've had friends with me before where they've asked me, would you do some specific kinds of channeling? I mean, what I'm doing right now is channeling, but they're asking me, would you, sort of do more like an Edgar Cayce-ish kind of a reading? So I lie back and start going into, a trance sort of thing. And then they could ask questions, or sometimes it just starts moving wherever it's going to move. And my point is, not to be all fancy about that, but my point is that when it happened, a lot of times I'd be laying there breathing, and then all of a sudden my throat would get kind of gurgly. And there were a few times when it was very intense, because my movement into higher dimensions started creating kind of what some people would call an effluvia, or a liquid that you're moving through as you go from this dimension to higher dimensions. You're moving. It's almost like the etheric plane can seem liquidy to a dense body, even though it's not liquidy in reality, but it'll seem that way. So as I move through, there were a couple times when I would literally convulse or whatever, because I needed to spit out large quantities of this weird fluid, and it was almost like drowning in the fluid. So it was a little, clearly it was a little disconcerting and yucky and whatever else to the people in the room, but I understood what was happening because I could see it and feel it while I'm in that dimension. But since I'm half out of my body, I can't exactly get my body to just, cough it out and be done with it. It sounds like a hairball or something for a cat, but it's, it is like that. It's the dross, the stuff that's lingering. So you're moving through these dimensions, and you will need to extract some of this that isn't able to make it to the next dimension. Or you're moving through that dimension, you jump in a pool, you get wet. So you're moving through from one space or element to another, and then there's an effect. So hopefully that's not too much information and you understand. I'm just saying that we're going to go in now, we're moving into the fifth dimension, and we're going to continue to do that progressively. Now, again, multiple dimensions, third, fourth, fifth, and then some. But with that, any one dimension has an array of almost infinite numbers of issues, lessons, and so on with it. Now try to imagine if you and I are moving from third to fifth dimension, and all these things, these lessons are going to be having to be met. Well, how are you doing? I mean, I hope if you're really clear of all your third dimensional stuff, great, it won't be so bad. You work on fourth dimension now, and then you work on fifth as well. Great, but for some of us, some of these people haven't even started working on three-dimensional, third-dimensional kind of daily issues. How are they going to handle the transition when you're supposed to have already done some work? Meaning, also, one reason you and I are doing the work we're doing is to clear ourselves. Mystics have known this. Mystics have known this for a long, long time. Clear stuff while you're here so that you're clearer when you move to the other side. There's perks to this. This work is not just, haphazard. There's really, really important reason to it all, for it all. So the work we're doing starts to reach multiples because as we're growing, and some people, Michael, I'm growing and I'm meditating, I shouldn't have any more problems. And I'm saying, who told you that? Because the stuff's going to still be there. In fact, it's going to come in multiples. Now, that's not to sound pessimistic, but it's going to be done very efficiently with the Divine Mother, but you're going to work on. If I have third dimensional abandonment, then while I work on it in this lifetime, Spirit is going to start bringing up in me and through me some of my fourth dimensional abandonment versions and so on, so that I'm clearer to step from here to fifth dimension. Anything that's going to be sticking is going to be in the third and fourth dimension, basically. So before you get to fifth, you got to work on third and fourth. And that's why we're doing the work we're doing. That's why it's healthy to do 12-step work. Why you're doing child, family of origin work, inner child work. I'm not saying obsess on all these things, but that's why you're doing a fair bit of it. Even changing diet can be a part of easing the burden on the third dimensional body, because you start carrying a fourth and fifth dimensional frequency, and the body's going to be like, you want a what? It's going to be like you still have so many physical issues and addictions and whatever. You don't just go from total cirrhosis of the liver because you're drinking every day and you still smoke every day, packs a day, and your lungs are like tar, and you're just going to become fifth dimensional and it'll all go away. I'm not saying you're fated to not get higher dimensional when you have such issues. I'm saying that we have these things, and the fifth dimension is going to ask you to clear it. How will you clear it? You personally and us globally, it's the same. It's going to get cleared. The easy way or the hard way. So how so? Just as examples. If my body is too far gone, if it's just too filled with toxins and tar, the sad truth is, it's possible that something miraculous is going to happen. Clear it. I stop smoking and my lungs get clearer. And you don't have to obsess on it. You just do the best you can. And then I go to the fifth dimension someday. That's great. But sometimes the way I'm going to get to the fifth dimension is I'm going to do all this wonderful internal spiritual clearing. The lungs won't make it. They won't catch up to my psychological, spiritual work. The lungs are going to be like, have a nice trip without us. We're not going anywhere. And so you'll pass away. The lungs will say, we're not going to make it. So the soul will then say, well, but we're really ready for the fifth dimension. We're ready for higher consciousness. Looks like the body's not going to be able to make the transition, so we'll ascend without the body. And so you will actually let the body go, called death, and then transition into the higher dimensions without the body. But some people will actually transition while they're in a body. They will actually turn to light, in the sense that you'll still be visible. You'll still be visible because when you have a light body, more like a fifth dimensional body, you are able to materialize and be seen and then phase out and disappear and move to wherever you want to go. So this is going to happen globally, guys. The fifth dimension is being anchored in the earth plane. And each group out there, spiritual group, thinks they're the only ones, But what's really cool is that there's the New Agers out there that are doing decrees like affirmations. I call in the golden light of this ascended master and the purple light of that ascended master to surround my body and create a light body and frequency of the purple flame and the sixth dimensionality and the blah, blah, blah. And they're absolutely having an effect. Then there's some natives out there, Native Americans or whatever other indigenous people, just the boom, 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 boom ceremony and tuning in and doing their light work and their spiritual affirmations and whatever their versions of ceremony are. And there's the druids over here. I'm not talking about groups that are pseudo spiritual and really just fraudulent. I'm talking about ones when the heart is right. And there's, it could be guys, it could be Catholics in a mass praying for the saving of humanity. All of it is playing a part. All of it that's good, all of it that's authentic. The more authentic, the more heartfelt it is, the more of a real effect it's having. I know that I'm playing a part. You need to ask yourself, are you really doing your light work? And some of you are going to say, yeah, I'm doing what I can to get by and have a better life. That's phase one. Phase two of your light work, are you making a difference for others? Are you bringing the changes in you to others? That's cool. That's the completing the first major piece. Part one, yourself. Part two, others, because that completes this whole dynamic, this connection. Another part is going to involve, what am I doing for the world? One is others close to me. The other is the world. The world doesn't mean I have to get on a broadcast around the world. It means Am I doing light work like grid work? Am I doing prayer? When I pray, am I praying for world experience of peace and God and love? And if you don't, it's okay. It doesn't matter. I would say get your own act together. And when you feel confident enough, you're going to say, you know what? I was thirsty. I was hungry. I was starving. So I could barely live. Now I feel strong enough. I sort of feel healthy enough after climbing out of that illness I was in called human, limited consciousness. I feel really good. I guess I prayed enough, meditated, did yoga and all this, and I just feel good enough. Now I'm going to start helping others. See, I'm healthy enough. I feel okay. A tragedy, where we're all, the ship sank and we're all, swept ashore on some desert island. At first it takes some time to get your wits about you and recover yourself before you can maybe have the energy to pull others from the water and save them. So that's what we're doing. Are you in phase 1 yourself? Are you in phase 2 others? Fine. It's all fine. And at some point, you'll go from just yourself and just others to saying, okay, now that we figured out who survived and who's here, now that everybody's got a little bit of water or something, okay, now we better suss the situation. Where are we? What island are we on? Is there a way to help all the group, everybody as a group? Not one here and there, but everybody as a group. And it'll come to you as to what that's going to be. It'll be a song you write. It'll be a blog you write. It'll be just your prayers for everybody on the planet. It'll be light work, grid work meaning, where you sort of find a beautiful spot on the planet, an auspicious site, like a sacred site, or just a place you decide to make sacred in your own backyard. But you imagine bringing in the Christ frequency and anchoring it right there where you live, right there where you stand, right there where you sit, and so on. So that's a little bit more global. So that's going to happen. Now, that's all going to help us learn the easy way. The hard way is going to be any parts of me that refuse to move along with the program, because the program is God's will that we all awaken. So you can bet your butt it's going to happen. It's not like you can say, no, I don't want to wake up. You're allowed to stall and then, be one of the ones that when the oceans came, you got swept by them because you didn't get up and move when they said it's coming. There's stories of volcanoes about to erupt, and there's always some, crotchety human being, no matter what age, young or old, crotchety human being who refuses, I'm not going anywhere. I've been living here all these years and this is my house. And boom, gone. Next, try it next lifetime. They have to come back as, some other rough experience because of their stubbornness. So you and I have to meet ourselves. We have to face ourselves. So any part of us that's resistant to love, resistant to forgiveness, resistant to consciousness expansion in a healthy way, any part of that, it's going to have to be met. So the idea is just let go of all the shields and defenses and keep moving. Let's go. Let's keep moving. Come on, guys. Here we're going. We're moving. Some more movement today. And the movement today is going to be family issues, and the movement tomorrow is going to be another thing. Whatever it is, it is. It's going to be in front of you at any given time. Are you noticing it? Are you hearing the call? And are you stepping up and meeting the call? Or are you refusing? I refuse to heal. I would forgive, but that person doesn't deserve it. Those are all just excuses. And you're going to have to face them, meet them. They're going to live themselves out through you, as you, in you. So the hard way is going to be on planet Earth. It's going to involve earth changes. The political world as we know it is going to continue to collapse. There's people that are like, if only we got a certain person in office, if only. Guys, it's not going to work. It's consciousness that has to change, not puppets in a building. Economy is going to continue to do strange things, and so will the weather. And there's people that say, oh, no, there's no issues with the weather. There's no such thing as global warming or whatever. That's fine. That's fine. And there's no such thing as ego, and there's no such thing as evil, and there's no such thing as greed, and so on. No problem. If you can't learn the easy way, which would be recognition of a problem and a willingness to shift it, that's whether that's globally or personally, then we learn the hard way. And that, unfortunately, is going to be collapses of different kinds, continents, oceans, glaciers, all those things. They're going to happen. You know, I'm not trying to be like a doomsday guy, but those things are going to happen. There's always a chance that humanity is going to say, you know, wait a minute, we could just learn the easy way. But that's not been their pattern so far. And it's been millions of years. So we're in a situation where, yeah, the hard way might come. And when the hard way comes, then it will happen that some of us are going to simply start shifting, almost like turning to light, becoming more ethereal, almost dramatically so, quickly so. Others are not going to be able to get their bodies to catch up. They'll need to pass away and move. This is what I was saying when we look back at it, as though it was history. It would be a long process of tens of years, 50, 60, 70, whatever years, shifting into this fifth dimension. But when we get to that pivotal moment, it's kind of like a plane, a jet. When we're up high enough, it's fairly calm. But as that plane starts to descend, which is us slowly shifting fifth dimension, you know, as we descend, kind of the metaphor of us ascending, as we descend and we hit a certain part of the atmosphere around the planet, here comes the turbulence. Or as we're taking off, turbulence. It's like that. The transition is the painful part. The transition is the turbulent part, physically, emotionally, and so on. So human beings are going to, have this moment where all of a sudden, it happens. It's going to be peaceful eventually, but there's the transition. And what's that going to look like? Nobody can say exactly, because our moods and willingness and readiness shifts every second of every day. But for the most part, we made it, guys. We made it through a lot of these things. We've already eased the burden on a lot of these things. Visionaries who have visitations with Mother Mary over the many years, last 100 years, Fatima and Garabandal and Medjugorje, the children, most of the time it's been children, who have had these visions. There are times when she has said, like in Fatima, Portugal, there's going to be terrible things. A world war is coming. And the kids are like, a what? Never heard of such a thing. And it happened, World War I. And they're like, okay, continuing the visions. She's talking to the children now that they're a few years older. Now another war is going to come, even more terrible than the last. And the children are like, why? Because humanity isn't listening. And she said, and if they still don't get it, there's going to be a third and worse world war that will devastate everything. Now, she predicted these things. She predicted some other things. And some of them, she said, this particular, we'll call it catastrophe or challenge, it was abated, it was alleviated, it was dissipated because of prayer. What's funny about this is, if you look at it and say she predicted these things before they happened, like the world wars, you go, wow. Or the depression, you go, wow. Edgar Casey predicted the depression. Amazing. But when they tell you things got alleviated, you have no reference point for that. You don't know how to give thanks for it. You don't know. You just don't know how to give thanks. Oh, let's give thanks for that thing that didn't happen. It didn't happen, so you don't know how to thank for it. You don't know what to thank. What are you giving thanks for? That such and such didn't happen. But you don't even believe that it would have happened because you have no reference to it. So you could try to, but humans are like that. They don't have as much, seemingly, they don't have as much appreciation for the things that didn't go wrong as the ones that did and then eventually got better. That's clearly a case of learning the hard way. So Mother Mary tells us that these certain things got, dispersed, and that's kind of cool. But the fact that even one ever got dispersed means something very powerful to us all, that it can be done. And that to me means even this stuff that's awaiting us now can be done smoothly or not. Now, the thing is, When I say it might not be smooth, that doesn't mean always just absolute third dimensional catastrophe. It can just be things that are economic challenges or political dramas like we've had recently. That's enough to tell you that there's a wrestling going on. When you go to if you were to go to a faith healer or a surgeon for that matter, and they were removing something from you, you can kind of tell there's something happening, whether it's painful or not, there's something happening. The politics is like a psychic surgery, and people are, bemoaning it as though, well, if only this happened, then that would be great. That's not the goal. Stop praying for, I want this fixed. Look at it, step back and go, this is one ache that is symbolic of a bigger issue. So I'm praying for the bigger issue to be healed, which is mankind's hurt and hate and fear, so that we can let go of that thing that was becoming painful to extract. Don't wish anybody harm. Don't wish the president or the non-president harm. Wish them well. Hold them in light. Imagine them just surrounded with just as much light as Christ Jesus himself, and then you might alleviate the fear or hate consciousness in that person. I know that's a tall order because I'm asking you to shift things through consciousness rather than bitching and moaning and, whatever, but only one of them really works. The other just makes you feel better momentarily because you're joining with everybody else that's complaining. It's the way it goes. If you want to be human, be a human. Now, if you choose that route, then you're being three-dimensional. And in case you didn't catch this yet, the third dimension is dying, which means when you're being hateful, you are dying. You're part of a lost breed. And it's a good thing that you're an old lost breed and that you're dying, because you don't suit the frequency of love that we're moving into. My God, I see this happening in industry. I see it happening even in spiritual centers. I've told you, in different talks I've done. I stopped touring almost completely. I mean, I tour maybe 2% of what I ever once did. And that's to very, just selected, chosen place that I'll still go to once or twice per year. Instead of 20 locations a year, it'll be 1 or 2. And I don't travel to places as much because of the corruption in the spiritual centers. There's one that I'm not going to just because, and I can't say it's because of the corruptions and so forth. It was just, I'll say, Unity of Atlanta, beautiful minister, beautiful people. That's the only one I'm going to say that I'm not going to just because of logistics. They're good people. But any other place you've ever seen me going to, heard of me going to, that I'm no longer going to, which would be every other place that I once toured, I'm not going for a reason. And if you live near there, go to those places. You should know that, or know loved ones that go there. Don't call them and say, Michael's not going there because you're evil. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, just like any other relationship, you can recognize when something's too far gone and it doesn't work for you, and that's it. So I'm not going because sometimes it's corruption. Sometimes it's just because when the group or an individual senses there's a shift into higher consciousness, they resist and they get afraid and they retract back to and retreat back to old ways. So a lot of the churches, it's not about corruption. Spiritual centers, yoga centers, it's not about corruption. A lot of them, it's actually just because they're going backwards. Sometimes there's, stuff, corruption and control trips, to the max. But a lot of times, guys, it's just they're going backwards, and I can't. I've had them ask me. There's places I used to go to just like in the Pacific Northwest, like Northern California and Pacific Northwest, where they literally told me, and I know I've shared this before, but literally told me, do you have to keep referencing God? Can you leave God out of it? Because we're trying to empower people to be God. And I'd say, well, that's exactly why we're in a third dimensional world all screwed up, because we're trying to do things without God. But, rather than fight that, or rather than comply, because I'm not going to be really easy at complying with something that's that twisted. Now, if it was just they asked me to shift wording slightly, no problem. I can bridge. That's not a problem, but I can't just jump off a cliff for people. I can build a bridge. That's not a problem. So in your own life and in my life, I'm telling you, it's the changes. These are all symptoms of an ending. The world is already coming to an end. The world is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. Now that sounds bleak and negative, but no, what I mean by that is you're already dead. You're already home. We're already back in God, just still reliving or experiencing the ghosts of a life that we once had. All we're doing is choosing to act like we're still here in a phantom world, ghostly version of a world we once lived in. You know, I don't know if you know this, but it has happened many, many, many times. It's not like an anomaly once or twice. Many times, photographers have taken pictures of freeways that are empty, and yet the photo is developed and there's cars everywhere. Parking lots that are empty, and yet it's developed, there's cars everywhere. That's an interesting thing, but how did the camera pick that up? And you might think that there's some mechanical phenomenon to that to make that look so, and I'm sure that's a possibility. But no, sometimes, especially with photographers, they're a little more sixth sense developed. It creates that perfect storm to allow these cars to show up in a parking lot that's empty. Cars that were there literally 6 hours earlier. So what you're seeing is the etheric memory. Kind of like the Civil War, people go and browse around Gettysburg and they're seeing, sometimes they actually see sights and settings and experiences that happened then. Soldiers fighting and this and that. It's strange. And they're ghosts. Yes, a lot of it is actually ghost, fourth dimensional experience, but sometimes they're etheric memories. They're not actually living ghosts. They're actually memories of. You're actually able to pick up, like an Akashic record, memory of an event that happened right over here or right over there. It's not actually ghosts still stuck in that experience, although sometimes it's that too. So planet Earth is that. It's really already a phantom, a ghost of what once was and has already disappeared, and we've already gone home, believe it or not. You know, this is Friday, our talk here on a Friday, but I think maybe on Sunday at our Sacred Sunday service, those are at 10:15 Arizona time every Sunday morning. I think maybe we'll talk about that the fact that we're already home. I don't know, I can't promise that, but something might do that, something more along those lines. So I hope today has been making sense, because we're talking about, in part, the transition from third dimension to fifth dimension, but we're also talking about the stuff that happens on the way there. Instead of just saying, hi, welcome, fifth dimension, wow, we're all moving there, and, I bet you're all feeling etheric now, and wearing gold and purple and seemingly all a little pyramid cap on my head and, getting all cool and cosmic about it. Instead, I feel compelled more to say, we better look at the stuff that has to be released to get to that place, because not a lot of people seem to be addressing that or talking about that. It's the truth, but they don't talk about it because they want to talk about the exciting trip that they're going on. Well, you're not going to make it on that trip until the other work is done, the groundwork is done. So watch for that. Notice that. If you start to pick up symptoms that are so odd and so forth, you're not going to fix it with third dimensional consciousness and doctors and so on. I'm not saying don't do anything about it. Change what you can. Sometimes, though, accept what you can't, and know that you're not going crazy. You're just waking up. Some of the things that are going on in the planet, people's psychic selves, the sensitivities, hypersensitivities that people feel, extreme sensitivities, psychically, etherically, all that. But it's all in transition, and it will be coming to an end in the near future. But do you want to be one of the ones that have to go through hell to get to heaven, or do you want to just be the ones that choose heaven? So there's two elevators to choose from. One has one floor, H, go, heaven. and just surrender, and God will take you whatever levels you need to do your work on the way, and it's the fastest route home. The other elevator also has an H, hell, and has a very different route. Instead of just straight up ascension consciousness, it's downwards, left, right, everywhere. It's an odd elevator, and for some reason people are more intrigued by that one than the other. They're curious. Curiosity killed the cat, but it also killed us. It is spiritually, morally. So there's choice that we make. Choose God. Choose enlightenment. Choose awareness. Choose to wake up. You can choose the other. That doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you strange. Because why would you want pain? But we do. We do choose the other sometimes, most of the time, on earth. So make better choices in your life. Please, please, no settling. Maybe we'll do a talk on next Friday on settling, but no settling. Maybe somebody can remind me and we'll do that if you email me closer to next Friday. But just keep it in mind, guys. Don't settle. That's not how you get to the fifth dimension. You get there by choosing to live the consciousness of it, the fifth dimension. Soulmate friendships, forgiveness processes, reading, meditating, reading healthy things, watching healthy things. Sing, sing when you're struggling. I was, doing some hard work earlier today, for some people. And I'm noticing that I'm aware that this is going to be fairly hard work. So I just took a breath, and there's only one other way. Instead of hard work, be with me, God. Just like we started several minutes ago when we started. Be with me. You're the only one that can make this seem like it was nothing. And I swear it happened. I could still pause and notice, is this still hard work? Yes. If I wanted to, free will, and it's kind of silly, but we do it. But I just shifted back to gratitude. No, wait a minute. This was magic. I wasn't even noticing the physicality of this. I wasn't noticing the psychological challenge with this. And I just shifted back again and again. Do it. Live in the zone. If you missed it last Sunday, we did a talk called Living in the Light of God. And that's sort of what I'm talking about here. So you can always go back and watch it. On YouTube, we have playlists, about a dozen. There's not that many, maybe 10, There's not that many to choose from. It's kind of cool. You can watch any number freely, but if you want to use playlists to select, there's some that are more directly about us connecting with God. There are some that are about healing. There are some that are more about psychology, some that are more about relationships. So different categories to make it easier for you to sort of pick something and then delve into it. So, and they're always being added to every time I do a Friday or a Sunday talk. So I pray today's made good sense, and I constantly thank you guys for your love and support. If you feel called to do so, you can make donations to support this work. If not, I freely give it anyway. So it's your call. But when you can help and how you can help, it's greatly appreciated. Especially, in this third dimensional world, we got those three-dimensional things to deal with. It's kind of funny. So do them with grace, do them with love. Try not to let the third dimensional things scare you like they once did, whether it's loneliness, debt, or whatever other negative experience. Try to stay in the light of God while you deal with these things and ask God to be with you while you deal with them. Peace be with you. Bye-bye.